Bobby Broyles and Tim McDonald here.
Should be a really interesting matchup. Buckle up. If you're not watching, you got some problems.
The 2016 regular season is officially in the books, and with that, it's already playoff mode across the conference. Bobby Broyles alongside Tim McDonald with This Week in CA Football, presented by Geico. Tim, we all know you want to jump right into postseason talk, but let's look back at Saturday first.
Got to start with the Dukes. Hats off to JMU. Remarkable to think that the Dukes went a perfect 8-0 in CA football play. Just the 8th team since 1988 to accomplish that feat. A brand new head coach before the start of the season and a daunting road slate. I mean, those are very easy factors that people, I think, you overlook before the season, but hats off to JMU. 63-14 win over Elon behind CA Rookie of the Week, Cole Johnson. I guess he did pretty well.
Yes, he did.
Near perfect performance, 274 yards and 2 touchdowns, 699 yards of offense. Madison at home this season averaged 59.5 points per game. Wow. 6 games now, and we're going to have the chance to stay home. We'll get into that a little bit later, but if the Dukes can keep winning, that's only great news. Both Wildcats teams won on the road last week. Andy Talley's last Battle of Blue, that was memorable, to say the least. Nova QB Zach Bednarczyk tossed for 4 touchdowns in the 41-10 win over Delaware, 2 to tight end Brian Bell. New Hampshire, on the other hand, scored 17 points in the second half to keep the musket. A 24-21 win at Maine to end the season. Adam Reese came off the bench in relief of Trevor Knight, and I thought he played better and better as the game grew, but Dalton Crossan played like a man. He was the difference in the second half, 163 yards and 1 highlight touchdown that tied the game in the third. Obviously, the conference and Richmond had some tough news from that William & Mary game. Besides the impressive Tribe win, I mean, that's the headliner, but Kyle Lauletta. We find out he goes down. It's a torn ACL, misses the majority of the game, and obviously that hurt the Spiders, but you have to feel for Kyle and Richmond. Such a good kid. We met him at Media Day. We've seen it's a very tough, not only is he a leader, but he's arguably their best player. It's very tough, but you have to give credit to William & Mary. Kendall Anderson, all he did was finish his career with a program record, 42 carries and 2 scores, 219 yards in the 34-13 win, a statement win. The Spiders now still reach the postseason. We'll get into that again, but man, is that a different perspective for Danny Rocco's team right now than where they were at. Potentially thinking about seed. It's insane to think about, and obviously Richmond's been dealt with the injury bug this year a lot. Towson storms back at Rhodey, freshman kicker Aiden O'Neill. Casual 55-yarder as time expired. Tigers actually trailed by 8 with less than 2 minutes to play in that one. End the season now with 3 straight wins. Hats off to the Tigers. And finally, the Great Danes grabbed the Golden Apple Trophy with a 13-6 win over Stony Brook. Rayshon Clark, the senior, had 2 picks and the game's only touchdown on a fumble recovery. That was 13-6, so that tells you how much of a stalemate that game was. For the second straight year, though, I mean, Selection Sunday, I honestly feel that CA football got snubbed for the second straight year. From a playoff pick, again, the Danes had 7 wins, let alone also had an FBS victory, and get left out. And the playoff committee, you have to live with them because at the end of the day, it's their decisions. They're the ones, above our pay grade making those calls. But I strongly feel that the committee overlooked a team that was very, if not overly qualified. For what they ask you to do to make the playoffs, Albany had met all that criteria. And for them to get left out, I think, is disappointing.
Yes, indeed. Christmas morning for your favorite time of the year was the FCS selection show on Sunday with 4 CA football teams picked for the 3rd straight year. CA football champs JMU gets the number 4 seed, a first-round bye, while Richmond, Villanova, and New Hampshire will all host first-round games this Saturday. All 3 of those games take place at 2 p.m., Tim.
Really nice, too, right? Sets up. What are you going to do on Saturday? I mean, you got to watch the FCS playoffs. JMU was rewarded with that number 4 overall seed. Remember, last year they were 5, but it's rightfully so. 10 wins in the regular season for the second time in program history. Did not have an FCS loss while playing a complete Division I schedule. That's the only team, by the way, in the playoffs that can say that. More importantly to me, I think there's a different attitude, a different mindset, and this team, I think, probably has a better appreciation for being home. They've played 2 home games the last 2 years, but I think the early exits is probably fueling the fire a little bit more. And then on the other hand, New Hampshire, Villanova, and Richmond, I mean, still get rewarded and get to stay home in the first round, which I thought was warranted. But you know why I love CA football and why I love this conference? There's been very little any chatter about all 3 teams being on the same side of the bracket. People are just kind of lining up and not talking about it at all. Let it play out. That's kind of how you have to deal with it. Whether you like it or not, you have to play with the hand that you're dealt. And so far, that's the expectations and understanding from around the conference, especially on the conference call yesterday. Didn't hear one coach really complain about being on the same side of the bracket. So Just throwing that one out there. There's 24 teams left in the country, and at some point you're obviously going to have to play someone from your own conference. That's nothing new in a historical reference, though. This is the 9th time since 1995 that CAA football has had at least 4 teams in the field, easily the most among all FCS conferences during that time span.
Once again, the playoffs are very convenient for viewers as all 3 games are slated to be at 2 o'clock and will be on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app. Starting in Philly, Villanova hosts St. Francis. And Tim, you know the Wildcats would love to keep their season alive and send Coach Talley out with a win in possibly his last home game in Villanova Stadium.
A sour taste last time Villanova left this stadium. Now you get a chance to have a little shot at redemption. St. Francis out of the Northeast Conference, a team that has a lot of CAA football history. Lost at Towson and UAlbany. Both of those were close games. Went 5-1 in league play. Lost their regular season finale, but the Red Flash do have a phenomenal schedule, I should say. Played at Montana earlier this season, so I don't think going to Villanova and playing on the road is going to be a hard situation for them. They've already dealt with that many times. Senior Zach Dreyer has over 2,000 yards passing and 21 touchdowns. He also handles the majority of the team's punting. St. Francis averages 27 points, 217 passing yards per game. Defense has held 5 opponents to 10 points or fewer, but right now Nova has to be feeling better about itself, especially on both sides of the ball after that bounce-back win over Delaware. Defense has allowed a CAA low 21 total touchdowns the whole season, 14.9 points per game, and another conference best 10 rushing touchdowns allowed all season. Not just in the last half, in all season. Yeah. I expect Matt Gudzik, Aaron Forbes, Javon White, all of those guys at running back, whether it's end-arounds, just to help carry the load on offense, and that's how I think Villanova is going to try to attack St. Francis. The Nova defense is playing so well in the later half of the season. I think that's the difference on Saturday. Many players, I'm sure, many coaches thought after that JMU loss, well, that's awful for Andy Talley to play his last game. Now you get another shot at redemption, and I'm excited to see how they respond in this one.
Richmond welcomes North Carolina A&T to Robins Stadium on Saturday. Like we said earlier, devastating news for the Spiders this past weekend, losing quarterback Kyle Lauletta for the season. But staying home should help this team try to rally.
You have to look to the seniors, and you have to just, in some way, and it's very tough. Where do you start? Because not only stat-wise, not only leadership-wise, but Kyle Lauletta, it's tough to really break down what he's meant to Richmond this year. Spiders have now lost David Jones, Gordon Collins, Xavier Goodall. I mean, they're well aware of the injuries and losing players for the season. Just adds to the difficulty, but still, you have to take the positives. Again, you are playing at home with a chance to keep your season alive and bounce back. Your defense right now, I still believe this is a very solid defense.
Yes.
Despite allowing 225 rush yards in that loss to William & Mary, I can guarantee you, Omar Howard, Brian Brown, Winston Craig, those seniors, I can guarantee those seniors are going to look to the younger guys and say, no one's going to feel sorry for us. This is the playoffs. We're still alive. The season is not over. Playing in the playoffs for the 3rd straight year, I only expect better leadership out of those guys especially, and I know they're capable of doing that. NCAA, a very good team out of the MEAC, had a very good year. 9-2 overall. The Aggies on an FBS win as well, like the Spiders, beat Kent State in 4 overtimes earlier in the season, won 7 straight games, and lost the finale to rival North Carolina Central last week. Richmond front is going to face one of the best running backs in the FCS in Tariq Cohen. 1,500-plus rushing yards and 18 touchdowns on the season. Spiders struggles on offense, obviously, after Lauletta went down last week. We saw both Reed Chenault and Jake Kleiss. Both of them played and came in relief, but attempted just 5 passes and 1 completed. Expect a whole lot of Deontez Thompson. Last week, I mean, the good news is 5 straight 100-yard rushing games. 5 this season, and he had 153 yards. We've seen him over the last few weeks. At this point in the year, he's not a freshman anymore.
No, he's not.
He's carrying the load on offense. If the Spiders can stop the run and find some room for their own ground game, it's only going to make things easier for whoever is under center. We'll find out early and often what this new-look Richmond team is gonna look like, but I can guarantee you that Deontez Thompson and the Spiders are going to try to attack North Carolina A&T through the ground.
We'll definitely see the leaders, like you said, like the Winston Craigs and the Omar Howards and the Thomas Evans on the offensive line really have to step up this Saturday. Last but not least, New Hampshire welcomes the Patriot League champs Lehigh to Durham. 13 straight seasons now, the Wildcats have advanced to the playoffs. Much like last year, they had to earn it and answer the call.
I mean, same old talk. You had to win that main game and you get in the playoffs, and it happened. Saw the bracket and the matchup and immediately thought back to 2015. This team had to fight to make the playoffs, only to come home, get a home game, and lose to Colgate, another Patriot League champ, which also went on to play at JMU, and we know how the story ended up. They also beat JMU.
A lot of deja vu there.
I can only imagine both New Hampshire and JMU saw the bracket and now fully have their antennas up and ready to go for another good Patriot League team. This is the 4th straight year that actually New Hampshire is playing the Patriot League champ in its first playoff game. It looks right now that Adam Reese, as far as we know, is going to be the guy under center. After Trevor Knight got hurt early in that main game, it looked like a foot issue. If there's any difference or good news for the Wildcats, it's that A, they've been in this situation playing at home before, and B, Reese has come in a couple of times this year in relief and got the job done. We saw him in that James Madison game. We've seen him throughout the season earlier in contests. Lefty had 218 yards and 1 touchdown, but also I thought made some bigger plays in the second half, airing it out to Rory Donovan a couple of times. Talked about Crossan, but man, I mean, he right now has 1,005 rushing yards on the season. He's just the second 1,000-yard rusher for New Hampshire since that playoff streak started. So that goes to show you how rare it is to have a 1,000-yard rusher. He needs to get going early and often, plain and simple, if New Hampshire wants any chance of advancing. Lehigh and New Hampshire have played plenty of times before, most recently coming in 2014. Mount Knox have won 9 straight since the 0-2 start, including, you remember, they lost to Villanova on the road, 26-21 in early September. Nick Chavnisky is a quarterback who I think is one of the most underrated quarterbacks in the FCS level. This offense is 40 points per game, almost 500 yards of offense, 325 passing, 165 rushing. I mean, just it's going to be a test. This is going to be a Wildcat secondary that I thought in the second half we saw 2 freshmen, Bob Lacey, we saw Isaiah Perkins come up with picks. This is going to be a huge test. 3 receivers have over 50 catches, 2 over 1,000 yards, and 2 of their wideouts have accounted for 25 total touchdowns. Lehigh's a pass-happy team, but I think UNH playing at home is only going to help the last 2 games. UNH has played in the playoffs. The Wildcats have lost at home, and it's been a sour note. Playing at home, I think, is going to fuel that fire. It could be the game of the week, at what I think, in the FCS level in terms of the first-round playoffs. Well, of course, can't look ahead, and I don't think New Hampshire or Lehigh will. But, of course, guess where the winner goes? To JMU.
To
Harrisonburg.
Yes. All the links to Saturday's 3 playoff games can be found on cafootball.com throughout the week. You can also follow the games with updates from our Twitter account at CAFootball. Before we leave you for the holiday, be sure to tune in on Thursday for a special Thanksgiving edition Going Deep feature.
Mike and I sat down with the Tribe senior Steve Cooley, who might just be the only, we'll find some research, but might be the only college quarterback that owns a piloting license and legally is allowed to fly on his own. He actually has taken teammates up with him in the air, and many other things, many funny stories from this, but that's where I'll leave it for now. Much more coming, like you said. It's going to be different, but we're going to show it on Thanksgiving. William Mary's on-campus Going Deep feature can be seen on Thursday.
Did he invite you for a trip?
He kind of did. I'll watch the feature. Maybe you'll find out.
You and Mike never disappoint, even on Thanksgiving. Can't wait to watch that one. Hope you enjoy the games on Saturday. We'll see you back here next week.